The dean's voice was a low drone, but I wasn't listening. My eyes were fixed on the 5 empty seats in the third row, a gaping hole where my family should have been. My husband, my children, my parents, none of them showed up for my law school graduation. I had sacrificed 5 years of my life for this piece of paper, believing it was for us. But as I sat there, utterly alone in a sea of celebrating strangers, I understood the cold, hard truth. My greatest achievement meant nothing to them because they were all at my sister's gender reveal party. Have you ever felt that profound sting of being replaced, of realizing your milestone was just an inconvenience on someone else's social calendar? Before I dive into my story, I'd really appreciate it if you could let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and if you'd consider subscribing to my channel. It would mean the world to me and help me keep sharing more stories like this. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sarah, and on the day I graduated from law school, I learned a lesson that no textbook could ever teach me. The dean's voice was a low, steady drone from the podium, a comforting sound that should have been the soundtrack to my triumph. But I wasn't listening to his words about justice and perseverance. My eyes were fixed on the 5 empty seats in the third row, a gaping, shameful hole in the fabric of the audience where my family was supposed to be. My husband, my 2 children, my parents, none of them were there. I had sacrificed 5 grueling years of my life for this moment, for this single piece of paper, naively believing that the victory was for us. But as I sat there, a ghost in a black gown, utterly alone in a sea of celebrating strangers, I finally understood the cold, hard truth. My greatest achievement meant nothing to them because they were all at my sister's gender reveal party. The decision to go to law school at 37 hadn't been born from a lifelong ambition, but from sheer desperation for 12 years. I had been the silent, supportive partner to my husband, Mark. I had poured my own small inheritance and every ounce of my energy into his dream of launching a boutique marketing firm. I had put my own aspirations on hold, the dream of opening a small art gallery, a place filled with light and color and the works of local artists. I had been the one to work 2 jobs, one as a paralegal and another waiting tables on weekends, to keep us afloat when his business first faltered, when it finally collapsed under the weight of his mismanagement, leaving us with a mountain of debt. I was the one who held our family together. I remember one rainy night, sitting in our cold, sterile kitchen, the foreclosure notice lying on the table between us like a death certificate. Mark, his face pale with defeat, had taken my hands in his. "You were right all along, Sarah," he'd whispered, his voice cracking. "You've always been the smart one, the steady one. Now it's your turn. You go get that law degree you always talked about. I'll take care of everything here. The kids and I will be cheering for you every step of the way." His words felt like a lifeline, a promise of a future where my sacrifices would finally be seen, where my intelligence would be our salvation. I clung to that promise like a drowning woman to a piece of driftwood. So I enrolled in the evening program at the local university. The schedule was more than punishing. It was a systematic dismantling of my life. My days began at 5 in the morning, the harsh alarm pulling me from a few hours of restless sleep. I'd move through the dark house on autopilot, preparing breakfast and packing lunches before heading to my full-time paralegal job. 3 nights a week, I would rush from the office to the campus, my mind a blur of legal briefs and case law, subsisting on stale vending machine coffee that tasted like burnt plastic. I'd come home late, long after midnight, to a sink full of dishes and children who were already asleep, their homework left unchecked on the kitchen table. Weekends were not for rest or family outings. They were for marathon study sessions in our small home office. The door closed to the sounds of my family living a life without me. I once stumbled out of the office for a glass of water and overheard my son, Liam, then 13, complaining to Mark in the hallway. "Mom's always studying. She never has time for us anymore." The words were a physical blow, a sharp sting of guilt that I had to push down, swallowing the lump in my throat. This is for us, I would tell myself, staring at my gaunt reflection in the dark computer screen. This is temporary. I rationalized every missed soccer game, every school play I couldn't attend, every family dinner I ate alone hours after everyone else had finished. This degree was our way out, the key to financial stability, maybe even enough to finally take that trip to Italy I'd always dreamed of. It was an investment in our shared future. My relationship with my younger sister, Chloe, only complicated the family dynamic. Chloe had always been the star, the golden child. She had married a successful entrepreneur, lived in a sprawling house in the wealthiest suburb, and produced two beautiful, perfectly behaved daughters. She was effortlessly charming, the center of every family gathering, while I was the serious, responsible older sister, the one who always did the right thing but was never quite as fun. My parents, who lived just a town over, doted on her. They would drop everything to babysit for Chloe on a whim, but would have a list of prior commitments whenever I needed help during my final exams. "Your sister just needs us more, honey," my mother would say, her tone implying that my competence was a burden. "You've always been so self-sufficient." The first real crack in my carefully constructed reality appeared 2 months before graduation. Chloe called, her voice bubbling with an excitement that immediately put me on edge. "You are not going to believe this. Sarah, we're pregnant again. And we're doing a huge gender reveal party to announce it." I offered my congratulations. A mechanical response while my mind was already calculating the cost of a baby gift. Then she dropped the bomb. "We're having it on May 18th. It's a Saturday, so everyone can make it. We're going all out caterers. A bouncy castle for the kids. The works." A cold silence stretched across the phone line. May 18th. I had emailed the entire family the save the date for my graduation 6 months ago. I had a group chat dedicated to coordinating their travel and tickets. There was no way she didn't know. "Oh," she finally said, followed by a light, airy laugh. "Oh, that's your graduation day, isn't it? I completely forgot. Well, you know how these things are. Once the invitations go out," the casual indifference in her voice was more insulting than any outright malice. "Well, you can't change it, can you?" I asked, my voice tight. "Not really," she replied breezily. "The caterer is booked, and we've already sent out the digital invitations. Besides, it's just a ceremony. Sis, but this might be the first grandson for the family. It's a huge deal. You have to be there." Before I could even formulate a response, I heard Mark's voice in the background, muffled but clear. He was in the living room, within earshot of her call. "That's fantastic news. Chloe," he shouted, "count us in." We wouldn't miss it for the world. He had accepted on behalf of our entire family before I had even hung up the phone. The betrayal was so swift, so complete. It left me breathless. My conversation with my parents later that evening was even more demoralizing. I had called them, hoping for an ally, for someone to see reason. Instead, my mother's voice was filled with the same giddy excitement as Chloe's, a grandson. "Oh, Sarah, can you imagine? After all these girls, your father is thrilled. This is such a wonderful, important event for the whole family." I tried to explain, my voice trembling with frustration, that my graduation was also an important event, the culmination of 5 years of sacrifice. "Of course, it is, dear," my father interjected, his tone practical and patronizing. "But let's be realistic. Chloe's husband, Richard, is Mark's biggest business contact now. It's important for Mark to be there, to show support. It's about maintaining relationships. It's good for business. You can have your diploma mailed to you, can't you?" my mother suggested, as if it were the most logical solution in the world. "But you can't recreate a family celebration like this." I felt like I was screaming into a void. I was standing before a united front of cheerful, deliberate ignorance, my hard-won achievement, the very thing that was meant to save our family, had been demoted to a logistical inconvenience. That night, when I walked past the family calendar hanging in the kitchen, I saw it. I had circled May 18th in red ink months ago, with the words, "Sarah's graduation" written in capital letters. Now. A neat blue circle was drawn around the same date, in Mark's familiar handwriting. It read, Chloe's party. The night before my graduation, I made one last, desperate attempt to reason with Mark. He avoided my eyes, busying himself with loading the dishwasher, his shoulders tense. It's about keeping the peace. Sarah, he mumbled. You know how your sister gets, and your parents are so excited. It's just one day. The argument escalated, our voices rising in the quiet house until the kids came downstairs. Drawn by the tension, I gave up, retreating to my bedroom with a hollow ache in my chest. Later, when I went to tuck them in, my heart shattered. Liam, my 14-year-old, was practicing tying a small blue bow tie, and Ava, my 11-year-old, was twirling in a new frilly pink dress. For the party tomorrow, Ava said, her eyes shining. We have to wear pink or blue to vote for a girl or a boy. A cold dread washed over me. Later that night, unable to sleep, I found myself tidying Mark's closet, a nervous habit, tucked away behind a stack of old sweaters. I found a shopping bag from a high-end children's boutique. Inside were the clothes my children had been wearing, and at the bottom of the bag, crumpled into a ball, was the receipt. It was dated just 3 days after Chloe's initial phone call. He hadn't just caved to the pressure. He had been a willing, active participant in this betrayal from the very beginning. He had planned it for weeks, lying to my face every single day. On the morning of my graduation, the house was eerily silent. I woke up to an empty bed. They had left early. Without a word, I walked through the quiet rooms, a tourist in my own life. I got myself ready, my movements slow and robotic. I did my makeup carefully, concealing the puffiness around my eyes. I put on the new dress I'd bought for the occasion, a sophisticated charcoal gray sheath that now felt like a costume. I drove to the university alone, the silence in the car a screaming accusation. I found my assigned seat among my fellow graduates, a sea of black robes and hopeful faces. I was an island of misery in an ocean of joy. The ceremony began. Speeches were made, names were called. As the dean of the law school began his address, my phone buzzed in my lap. It was a group text from my mother. My hands trembled as I opened it. It wasn't a message of good luck or congratulations, it was a photo. A bright, sunny selfie of my entire family. Mark, Liam, Ava, my parents, and a beaming Chloe. Her hand on her swollen belly, all of them gathered under a massive shower of blue confetti and balloons that spelled out, "It's a boy." They were all smiling, their faces alight with joy. The caption beneath the photo, written by my mother, read, "He's a boy. Wish you were here to celebrate with us. It's so much fun." And then I saw the timestamp. The message had been sent at the exact moment the dean had asked the graduating class of the law school to rise. Something inside me didn't just break, it vaporized. The hurt, the anger, the years of quiet resentment, all of it coalesced into a single point of cold, crystalline clarity. The ceremony was a blur. I walked across the stage, shook a hand, accepted a leather-bound folder, and moved the tassel on my cap from right to left. I didn't return to my seat. I walked straight out of the auditorium, through the crowds of celebrating families, and didn't stop until I reached my car. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to Vitrina, the upscale Italian restaurant where I had made a reservation for 8 people to celebrate my graduation. The hostess looked at me with pity as I asked to be seated at the large, empty table I had booked. "Will you be waiting for the rest of your party?" she asked gently. "No," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "They won't be coming." I sat down at the head of the long table. I placed the empty diploma case on the chair opposite me, as if it were my guest of honor. I ordered the most expensive bottle of Barolo on the menu. And when the waiter brought it, I opened my laptop. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had transformed. It was no longer a debilitating grief. It was fuel. It was a cold, sharp focus I hadn't felt in years, for months. A small, nagging suspicion had been whispering at the back of my mind. A detail about Mark's new business dealings with my brother-in-law that hadn't quite added up. I had always pushed it away, telling myself I was too busy, too tired, too stressed to look into it. I had chosen to trust him. Now, with my newly minted, if uncelebrated, legal knowledge and the clarity of absolute betrayal. I began to dig. I sipped the rich, dark wine, the silence of the near-empty restaurant wrapping around me. My fingers flew across the keyboard with a purpose they had never had before. It didn't take a full forensic analysis. All it took was logging into our joint savings account, the one I had so painstakingly rebuilt after his first business failed. And there it was, glowing on the screen like a festering wound, the smoking gun. A single, massive wire transfer made to a shell corporation registered to my brother-in-law. It had nearly emptied our account. I cross-referenced the date, my blood turning to ice. The transfer was made just 2 days after my final student loan disbursement had been deposited. Mark had used the money I borrowed for my education, our supposed path to salvation, to secretly bail out his brother-in-law's fraudulent company. It was well after midnight when I finally paid the bill and drove home. The house was dark, except for the faint blue glow of the television in the living room. Mark was asleep on the sofa, still in his party clothes. The remnants of their celebration paper plates and blue plastic cups were still on the coffee table. I didn't wake him. I walked past him and into the kitchen. I didn't shout, I didn't cry. My actions were quiet, deliberate, and precise. I placed 2 things on the clean, polished granite of the kitchen island. First, I laid down the leather folder containing my law degree. Beside it, I placed a thick, neatly stapled sheaf of papers I had printed at a 24-hour copy shop on my way home: bank statements, wire transfer confirmations, articles of incorporation for the shell company. The sound of the papers hitting the counter woke him. He stumbled into the kitchen, his face a mask of confusion and guilt. "Sarah, you're home. I'm so sorry He stopped short when he saw the documents on the counter. He picked them up, his hands shaking as he flicked through the pages. The color drained from his face, leaving it a waxy, sallow white. He looked from the papers to me, his mouth opening and closing. But no words came out. "I'm not going to report him," I said, my voice calm and devoid of all emotion. It was the voice of a lawyer, not a wife. "I won't be the one to destroy your sister's family. But this is what is going to happen. You are going to agree to a dissolution of our marriage. You will give me sole physical and legal custody of Liam and Ava. You will sign this house over to me, free and clear, and you will give me half of whatever assets you haven't already funneled into that fraudulent company. You will do this quietly and quickly. If you hesitate, if you fight me on any of this entire folder goes to the district attorney's office at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." He sank to his knees, his body racked with sobs. It was the first time I'd ever seen him cry. But I felt nothing, no pity, no anger, not even satisfaction. There was only a vast silent emptiness where my love for him used to be. I simply stepped around his crumpled form on the floor, went upstairs, and began to pack a suitcase for myself and my children. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new corner office at a prestigious law firm in a city 3 states away. The window overlooked a bustling harbor, the water glittering in the afternoon sun. From my desk, I could hear the faint sounds of my children laughing in our new apartment, a bright, airy space filled with my own art and a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible. My phone vibrated on the polished surface of my desk. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in half a year, Chloe. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, the notification popped up. Out of a detached clinical curiosity, I listened. Her voice, once so bubbly and confident, was now a frantic, sobbing mess. She spoke of auditors, of federal investigations, of her husband's company collapsing. She said they were going to lose everything: the house, the cars, their entire life. She was begging me, my sister, the lawyer, to help them, to save them. I listened to the entire message, a feeling not of triumph, but of profound, quiet closure washing over me. Then, with a steady hand, I pressed the delete button. I took a sip of my coffee, the taste rich and warm, and turned back to the legal contract spread out before me. The past was gone. The future was mine. The empty seats at my graduation were the end of one story, but the beginning of my own. I learned that sometimes The most important boundaries are the ones you set not with anger, but with quiet finality. It's a difficult lesson, and it makes me wonder about your own experiences. What was the moment you realized you had to stop being the family's shock absorber and finally stand up for your own value and achievements? I would be honored to read your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking and subscribing for more stories about navigating complex family dynamics and finding your own strength. Thank you for being here with me today.